and this is from a demonstration that I've done before. And one thing that I want to point out is the principle that I'm kind of shooting for at first is the simplicity of blending a value from dark to bright. And what I've got going here is a start. And alongside with that, what I am doing is I'm customizing, if you will, my mark making by kind of making it go with the contour or the gesture that's being made by the building. You notice my marks they're not like the blades of grass where I might, do this type. I'm not shading with that here. I'm being purposeful in choosing my marks. Now, if I have blades of grass here that are this tall, back here, they're not going to be such. They're going to be very, very short and probably much lighter. And I might even do some shading horizontally in this area to make it look like the ground. And the ground should be in contrast to the building itself. Now, I've already begun this area. I'm going to work on that a little bit, but I'm also going to focus on how you can manipulate your values and make it look like this building is casting a shadow. My plan is to have the sun, my light source, coming from behind the building, backlighting it. And so what I've done is I've already toned the sky with a value using just a piece of paper towel. And what I want to do is come up to the edge of that building a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, like so. And so this gives me my base to work with. Now, one principle that I have in mind is that if I want some things to look brighter, for example, if I want the sun to look bright, I have to have a little bit of a darkness in my sky. I also want the sun to look brighter by using the darkness of the corner of the building that's just covering the sun. I'm sure many of you are familiar with being blinded by light, where you cannot see detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pretty dark leaded pencil, and I'm going to come on in here, and I'm going to start shading very, very dark, up to here. And what I'm getting at is the darkness of the door. I shaded this beforehand on purpose to give you a sense of this is 10, this is 0, and right now I'm shading at about an 8 or a 7 right here. And I just want to work my way down to develop a little more contrast. Now I want to do the same thing over here on this side too. And again, I'm drawing upside down, so I'm having to really work at controlling myself. And what that means is I may have to slow down in my mark making, but by the time I get to the middle, I want to be going horizontally. Whereas these, I'm going to go ahead and hit that corner going vertically to give us a sense of what's going on. I'm going to turn my paper a little bit. And, you could too. Turn your paper some. And now the rest of my building. The reason I'm doing it shading with these marks this way is to imply that what I have to work with is maybe a vinyl or a wood siding to the building, or brick even. And the lines that I'm using to shade this way support that idea. If I'm circling and doing all kinds of random mark making, then my marks are not going to support the texture that I may want to develop later, or the detail. So I'm going to go back in here and get very, very dark. In fact, up in this corner, my goal in this corner of the building is to get as dark as what I have here in the doorway. And along top of the building, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do something very similar. See, I've shaded with these grays to give myself a sense of, well, how dark am I really going to be able to get? And then how much contrast is available to me. Now that this is that dark, then I'm going to work on shading a bit more of the darkness into this area and make it fade a little bit more. And some of you are not very experienced with this, so you may want to practice using a grayscale on a separate sheet of paper, like the one that we did with hatching when we took your line notes. Okay. And now, okay. And of course, this is just a demonstration, but as I keep going with this, I'm going to try to be extra careful. And I want the building to get a little bit lighter as it goes down to the bottom of it, and maybe a little dark there, because there's a glow that might occur on a backlit building about here that's probably going to get it to be just a little bit brighter. At least that's what I imagine is happening. I'd have to really do a little more research to look up pictures of backlit structures to get a more specific idea. But as it might turn out, this could be, I don't know, it could show a little promise. And then back here on this edge, I'd want this to get very, very dark too, because again, I'm going to contrast this darkness with the brightness of the field where the light of the sun is hitting it as well. So I'm playing around with the values shifting from really dark, contrast the bright, to really dark, contrasting the bright, but doing it in such a way to make it look a little more natural. Okay. Now this can be blended. You know, I haven't really touched it with the blending stump yet, but if you have tissue paper or one of these blending stumps, you can kind of, you can smooth some of that out a little bit, play with how it fades around, clean up some of the edges by moving and smearing with that. I like the blending stump a little better because it means that you don't have to touch it with your skin, which has oils in it. Okay. Really want to get in here, enrich and darken those areas. Okay. Now again, I want to repeat this idea, and that the idea that's kind of the foundation of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that is that if I want some things to look bright, then I have to have other areas in order to contrast that to that look very, very dark. So that's what I'm shooting for here. I've got a nice, very extremely dark there. And you say some people put in a sun in their sky and they don't realize what's making it not look as bright, and that's because their darks don't exist. So now I'm going to come in with my drawing eraser, which is tubed in this plastic handle. It's really, really quite nice. When you squeeze it, it doesn't come out. And I'm going to go ahead and erase my brightness of this sunlight coming from behind. You say at first it looks like a cloud. That's probably true. But here's what I love about it. I'm going to go down the edge like so. I'm going to take my any kind of brush and get rid of the eraser shards. And then what can be done too is something I love, is you can blur a little bit and also do rays of sunlight that's kind of breaking through in front of this value like so. So I have actually some of your sun rays kind of breaking through and that contrast to the value of the building. And so what I'm doing is I'm almost shading in a backwards way, creating these lines that will be faded out. I'm going to blend those with a blending stump or a piece of tissue paper. And then I'm going to do the erasing again. I'm going to draw straight through them, like so. And this should be done in layers. Okay. Now my second layer, I'm going to do some erasing again and draw some more. Like so. Let's tone through that again. Now, for this to occur naturally, what might need to happen is a couple of, since it's backlit, I could go in here with my pencil and shade a little more darkly between some of the sun rays. Could actually add some depth to my sky by doing that. And then what I would do is smear and smudge those out. Okay, like so. As I work this up, and kind of focus on that. The other thing that I can do is, I know that this is backlit, which means I should have a perspective line about like that and about like that, where this whole area down here is going to be in shadow, and it's going to be at its darkest point by the foundation of the house. But as it goes down a little bit farther, it's going to get a little bit brighter. And one thing that can occur is if light is refracting in some way, then I might do an alternate, like have almost a really soft glow in this area and this area, while keeping the edge of the shadows fairly dark, just to add some complexity to it and maybe a little more lifelike of a shadow. So the darkest portion of the shadow could be here in this area I'm shading now, and then still working. You have this almost a glowing area that's still dark. This glowing area here that you kind of fade into it, like so. And then, of course, that can be toned to soften things and help you to see it a little more readily. But eventually, you want to go in and draw some blades of grass and keep that glow. I'm going to use this as a source here. So you got this shadow occurring behind the building. You got the ground. And then, you could start drawing blades of grass with your eraser along with your pencil. You could draw blades of grass in this area and so on. So again, when you are shading and you're drawing beams of light like that, you might have this little blurring effect that happens where you can, you can't really see the edge of the building as well in this area where the light crosses over it. But you have a definitive, really dark coming up against that brightness. And all of a sudden, this area, once you come back and you hit it once more, maybe for a final time, this really starts to become the point of emphasis on your building. And it really starts to take on some life. So I don't know if that, I was just kind of playing around with the idea. Hope that helps you.